Hi guys, and welcome to Boring History Secrets channel. Tonight we are walking toward a place you would normally avoid if you had literally any other option. You are on a rutted medieval road as the last of the daylight bleeds out of the sky, and ahead of you sits a low, crooked building glowing faintly with firelight. Smoke leaks from gaps in the roof like the tavern itself is breathing. Your boots are damp, your shoulders ache, and the idea of sleeping anywhere that is not the open ground feels like mercy. Even so, as you draw closer, you can already hear shouting, laughter, and the dull thud of something heavy hitting a table. You probably will not survive this night comfortably, and that is the honest truth. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you are here, tell me where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. There is something oddly comforting about knowing someone else is awake somewhere else in the dark. Now, dim the lights and let yourself step fully into this moment. You trudge the final stretch toward the tavern as dusk settles into a heavy blue-grey. The building squats beside the road like a patient animal, one that has seen generations of travelers come and go. Medieval taverns were often placed just outside town gates or at crossroads, not by accident, but because authorities preferred strangers to be contained where they could be watched. That is a simple historical fact that shaped your night before it even began. You did not choose this tavern. Geography and fatigue chose it for you. As you approach, the ground changes underfoot. The packed dirt becomes slick with mud, straw, and something darker you do not inspect too closely. The air smells of wet earth, old smoke, and sour ale carried on the breeze. Somewhere inside, someone is singing badly, stretching notes far beyond mercy. You pause for a moment, hand resting on the rough wooden doorframe, listening. This is the last moment of relative quiet you will have for hours. You adjust your cloak, already aware that it will not stay clean. Medieval travelers learned quickly that fabric absorbed everything: smoke, grease, sweat, and regret. Some historians still argue whether most people even bothered to wash outer garments regularly, or if they simply accepted a baseline level of grime as part of life. Tonight, you are about to add several new layers to yours. There is also the unspoken calculation running through your mind. Is this place safe enough? Safe is a flexible word in the Middle Ages. There are no locks on your luggage, no private room waiting upstairs unless you are wealthy, and no guarantee the person snoring beside you later will not try something foolish. A fringe detail worth knowing is that some medieval travel guides, yes, they existed in basic form, warned specifically about taverns that watered down ale too much. Apparently that was considered more dangerous than theft. You push the door open and are hit immediately by warmth and sound. The heat from the hearth rushes over your face, almost comforting, almost suffocating. Smoke hangs low, stinging your eyes. The ceiling beams disappear into shadow above you, dark with years of soot. This is not a cozy fireplace moment. This is survival warmth, the kind that exists because without it, people would die. Behind you, the door thumps shut, and it feels final. You are in now. The tavern floor is uneven beneath your feet, warped by time and spilled drink. Every step produces a faint stickiness. Straw has been scattered across the ground, not for decoration, but to soak up spills, mud, and worse. You will learn later that this straw may not be changed for days. Historians still debate how often tavern floors were truly cleaned, and the answers range from rarely to almost never. Your eyes adjust slowly. You take in long tables crowded with bodies, elbows touching, voices overlapping. Men and women of different ages cluster together, not out of friendliness, but necessity. A merchant with ink-stained fingers leans close to a farmer still smelling of animals. A soldier nurses a cup quietly, scanning the room with tired eyes. Everyone glances at you, just briefly, long enough to measure whether you are a threat, a mark, or irrelevant. There is a tavern keeper somewhere, you assume, but they are not immediately visible. In many regions, tavern keepers were required by law to provide food and drink to travelers at regulated prices. That sounds reassuring, until you realize enforcement was inconsistent at best. Tonight, you are relying more on custom than protection. The noise washes over you in layers, laughter that feels forced, arguments that have clearly been running for hours, the clatter of wooden cups, the crackle of fire. Under it all, the low hum of bodies sharing space too closely. You feel your shoulders tense without meaning to. This is not a place for solitude. You notice, dimly, that there are no separate sleeping areas in sight. That will come later. For now, the tavern is fully alive, and sleep feels very far away. A dog slinks between benches, ribs visible, tail wagging cautiously. Animals are allowed here, encouraged, even. They eat scraps and deter vermin, at least in theory. There is also the subtle awareness of time pressing on you. Medieval travel was dictated by daylight. Once night fully fell, roads became dangerous. Bandits, yes, but also broken ankles, wrong turns, and exposure. Choosing to sleep here was not indulgence. It was survival with compromises. You move further inside, letting the door close out the twilight completely. The smell intensifies. Ale, thick and slightly sweet. Boiled meat. Smoke that has seeped into every surface. Human bodies that have worked all day. This scent will cling to you long after morning, a souvenir you did not ask for. For a moment, you wonder how many nights like this have unfolded in this exact room. How many travelers stood where you stand now, tired, wary, hoping for rest. There is comfort in that continuity, even if it is a little grim. You tell yourself you will manage. People have managed for centuries. Still, a small, honest thought slips in as you look around at the crowd, the shadows, the door you just closed behind you. You probably will not sleep well tonight, and somehow, knowing that makes you relax just a little. You stand just inside the tavern, letting your eyes adjust while the room continues without caring about you. The threshold is not just a doorway, it is a boundary between the road and a social space with rules you did not write. Crossing it means you are now part of the room, whether you like it or not. A few conversations dip as people notice you fully, not silence, just a slight sag in volume, like a breath being held. Then the noise resumes, a little rougher than before. You feel assessed in small, efficient ways. Your boots, your cloak. Whether you carry yourself like someone worth robbing or someone best left alone, medieval taverns functioned as informal information exchanges. News travelled faster through ale-soaked mouths than through official proclamations, and strangers were always potential stories. You take a few careful steps forward. The floor shifts under you, one plank dipping noticeably, and you instinctively slow your pace. A spilled drink splashes lightly against your boot. No one apologizes. That tells you something important. You are not a guest in the modern sense. You are tolerated. The heat presses in from all sides. Bodies packed close together radiate warmth that mixes with the fire, creating a thick, heavy atmosphere. In winter, this could mean relief. Tonight, it means sweat forming under your layers almost immediately. You loosen your cloak, aware that it makes you look more vulnerable, but comfort wins. For now. Someone laughs loudly behind you, and you flinch before you can stop yourself. A hand claps a table hard enough to make cups jump. The sounds here have edges. Nothing is soft. Even the music, a rough fiddle scraping somewhere near the hearth, feels like it is being dragged rather than played. Medieval tavern music was not background ambience. It was loud, uneven, and often performed by whoever felt confident enough after enough drink. Historians still argue whether these spaces were more social hubs or pressure valves for daily frustration. Standing here, you suspect it was both. You look for somewhere to stand that does not block movement. This matters more than politeness. Blocking a path can earn you a shove, intentional or not. You tuck yourself near a thick wooden pillar, its surface worn smooth by centuries of passing hands. The wood is greasy under your fingers, polished by contact rather than care. You wipe your hand on your cloak automatically, then stop. It will not help. From here, you can take the room in more fully. Long tables dominate the space, scarred with knife marks and dark stains. Benches run along them, forcing people to sit shoulder to shoulder. There are no chairs with backs. Leaning is a privilege reserved for walls. Near the fire, a cluster of men argue over something you cannot quite hear, their voices rising and falling like waves. Near the far end, a woman nurses a cup alone, her posture guarded, eyes sharp. You become aware of the tavern keeper at last, not through an introduction, but through motion. A solid figure, weaving between tables with practiced ease, carrying multiple cups at once. Their presence changes the air slightly. Arguments soften when they pass. Someone straightens. Authority here is not ceremonial, it is practical. A mainstream historical fact is that tavern keepers could be fined or lose their license if fights broke out too often. Order mattered, even if it was rough. You wait. This is another learned behavior. Calling out is risky unless you know the tone of the room. You watch how others do it. A raised cup, a nod, eye contact held just long enough. Eventually, the tavern keeper notices you, not with surprise, but with calculation. Their eyes flick over you quickly. You nod once, they nod back. That is the transaction. You are acknowledged. While you wait, your senses continue to catalogue details, whether you want them to or not. The smell of spilled ale is stronger near the tables, sweet and sour at once. Somewhere, meat is roasting, fat dripping onto embers with a hiss. Smoke curls upward, trapped under the low ceiling, then spreads outward, settling on everything. You understand now why medieval writers sometimes complained about chronic eye irritation. This is not poetic exaggeration. It is physics. A quirky detail surfaces in your mind, something you once read and half dismissed. Some taverns reportedly added herbs or even breadcrumbs to ale to improve its appearance and taste. Standing here, you realize that anything making the drink more palatable was probably welcomed without many questions. Someone brushes past you, hard enough that you stumble a half step. They mutter something you do not catch. You steady yourself and do not respond. Another small rule learned. Conflict is currency here, and you do not want to spend it. You notice that no one has asked your name. This is another difference from modern expectations. Identity matters less than behavior. If you cause no trouble and pay your way, you can remain mostly anonymous. There is a strange comfort in that, also a risk. If something goes wrong, anonymity cuts both ways. As you stand there, waiting for a cup, the realization settles in that sleep will happen in this same space. There is no transition later to a quiet room. The tables may be cleared, the fire banked lower, but the bones of this place will not change. You will lie down where you stood, more or less, surrounded by the same people. This thought lands slowly, like weight on your chest. Historians still debate how much medieval people valued privacy compared to us, or whether they simply adapted to its absence. Watching the easy way bodies press together here, you suspect adaptation played a big role. Privacy was a luxury, not a right. The tavern keeper finally reaches you, sets a wooden cup into your hand without ceremony. The liquid inside is cloudy and warm. Ale, almost certainly. Water was often unsafe, and boiling it for brewing made ale the safer choice, even for children. That fact echoes through history, and tonight it echoes in your palm. You take a cautious sip. It is not terrible. It is not good either. It tastes alive, if that makes sense. Faintly sweet, faintly bitter. You swallow and feel the warmth spread. Your shoulders loosen a fraction. Alcohol was not just indulgence here. It was social glue, painkiller, and mild sedative all at once. You hold the cup close, aware that setting it down invites loss. Someone nearby catches your eye and raises their own cup in a silent acknowledgement. You nod back. A small bridge forms and dissolves. The threshold is well behind you now. You are fully inside the night of this tavern. The road, the quiet, the stars feel like another life. Ahead lies noise, shared space, and eventually, sleep of a sort. You take another sip, steady yourself against the pillar, and let the room continue around you. You begin to notice who truly controls this space, and it is not the loudest voice in the room. Authority here moves quietly, woven into routine. The tavern keeper glides past again, setting down cups, collecting coins, breaking up a disagreement with nothing more than a look. You realize that everyone is watching them, even when pretending not to. This place runs on habits learned over years, maybe decades, and you are stepping into a system already in motion. The person behind the tavern is not just a host. In many towns, they are licensed by local authorities, sometimes even sworn to uphold basic standards of order. Town records from across medieval Europe show fines issued to tavern keepers who allowed gambling, prostitution, or violence to spiral too far. Of course, what counted as too far was flexible. Tonight, you sense that flexibility in the air. Noise is tolerated, drunkenness is expected. Blood on the floor would be another matter. You watch as the tavern keeper pauses near the fire, exchanging a few low words with a man who looks irritated. The conversation ends quickly. The man sits back down, Whatever was said, it worked. There are no raised voices, no threats. Power here is practical, rooted in the ability to deny service or call for help if needed. You file that away. This is someone you do not want as an enemy. Behind the tavern keeper, you catch glimpses of others who keep the place running. A young servant carries a bucket toward the back, moving fast and keeping their eyes down. Another wipes a table with a rag that looks like it has cleaned many sins before. These workers are part of the furniture in a way, present, essential, but rarely acknowledged. Household accounts from the period hint that tavern servants often slept on site, sometimes under benches or near the hearth, once the guests finally collapsed. Their night will be even shorter than yours. The building itself tells you a story too. Thick beams overhead, darkened by smoke, suggest age. This tavern was likely rebuilt or expanded over time, adding rooms as trade increased. Many taverns began as private homes that gradually turned commercial as traffic along a road grew. That explains the odd layout, the way corners feel too small or doors seem placed without logic. You are not in a purpose-built inn. You are in something that evolved. You lean back against the pillar again, careful to keep your cup steady. You notice small marks carved into the wood nearby. Initials, symbols, lines. Travelers leaving proof they were here. One scratched symbol catches your eye. It might be a religious mark, or it might be nothing more than idle knife work. Interpretations vary, and the sources rarely clarify intent. What is clear is that people before you wanted to be remembered, even briefly. A ripple of laughter draws your attention back to the tables. Someone tells a joke you do not quite catch, but the reaction is enough. This is not refined humor. It is bodily, loud, and sometimes cruel, yet it binds people together. Shared laughter in a place like this is a kind of currency. You smile faintly into your cup, not because the joke was funny, but because you want to blend in. You start to understand that the tavern keeper's role extends beyond selling drink. They manage reputations. Regulars are treated differently from strangers. Someone who pays reliably and causes little trouble earns a certain leniency. Someone known for fights or unpaid tabs finds themselves watched more closely. There is an informal memory here, passed along through glances and tone. No ledger records it, but everyone knows. A small, easily missed detail surfaces as you watch this unfold. In some regions, tavern keepers were required to display their prices publicly, sometimes carved into wood or painted on walls. You do not see anything like that here. Either the rules are looser in this area, or enforcement has grown tired. You suspect the latter. Authority weakens with distance from town centres, and this tavern sits far enough away to enjoy that ambiguity. The tavern keeper passes you again and pauses. They glance at your cup, then at your face. A simple question follows. Will you be staying the night? You hesitate just long enough to show you are thinking. Then you nod. There is no paperwork, no formal agreement, just a mutual understanding. You will pay. You will not cause trouble. In return, you get a place to lie down later. They gesture vaguely toward the far end of the room, where benches line the wall. That is where sleeping will happen once the tables are cleared. The lack of ceremony is striking. In a modern hotel, check-in is a process. Here, it is a moment. You take another sip and feel the ale settle in your stomach. The warmth helps. Your muscles loosen a little more. Fatigue creeps up behind you, heavy and insistent. You realize you have been standing for a long time. Sitting feels tempting, but you wait. Seating can imply familiarity, and you are still learning the room. There is a quiet realization forming now. The tavern is not chaotic by accident. It is controlled chaos, shaped by custom and necessity. The tavern keeper sits at the center of that, less like a host and more like a referee who also pours drinks. This role developed because it had to. Travelers needed shelter. Locals needed gathering places. Someone had to keep it all from collapsing. As the night deepens, you understand that your sleep will depend as much on this person's authority as on your own exhaustion. If they keep order, the night may pass without incident. If not, well, you have already accepted a certain level of risk by stepping inside. You glance once more around the room, then back toward the fire. The tavern keeper moves on, already focused on the next task. You are officially a guest now, in the loosest sense of the word. Whatever happens next, it will happen under this roof, under these rules, and under the quiet watch of the person who owns the night. The smell reaches you before you fully understand it. It is not one thing but many layered together, each clinging to the next. Warm ale soaked into wood, smoke that has nowhere to go, wet wool drying slowly on bodies that never quite stop moving. There is also the faint, unmistakable edge of human sweat, old rather than fresh, the kind that lingers after a long day of labor. You breathe it in without meaning to, and it settles into you. At first, your instinct is to recoil, to take shorter breaths, but that does not last. The human body adapts quickly when it has to. After a few minutes, the smell becomes background, like the hum of voices or the crackle of the fire. Medieval life required this kind of sensory tolerance. Household manuals and personal letters from the period mention odors, often not with shock, but with resignation. Cleanliness existed, but it was not constant. Tonight, you are living inside that compromise. As you shift your weight, you notice how the scent changes depending on where you stand. Near the hearth, smoke dominates, thick and dry, coating your throat slightly. Closer to the tables, spilled drink and food take over, sweet and sour at once. Near the door, a colder note slips in. Mud, animal dung, damp leather. Every traveller brings the road with them, and the tavern collects it all. You catch a sharper smell suddenly and turn your head. It comes from a basket near the wall, filled with scraps. Bones, crusts, wilted greens. This is not waste in the modern sense. It will feed animals later, or be reused in some way. Medieval kitchens wasted little. That efficiency came at the cost of constant odor. A detail tucked into manor records suggests that even well-run households struggled with lingering smells, despite regular sweeping and airing. In a tavern like this, perfection was never the goal. Someone passes close enough that their sleeve brushes your arm. The fabric is damp, heavy with absorbed smoke and sweat. You resist the urge to pull away. Touch is unavoidable here. Privacy includes smell, and neither is available tonight. The floor contributes its own layer. Straw scattered underfoot has soaked up weeks of spills. When someone steps heavily, a faint musty smell rises, like old hay left too long in the rain. Some towns required tavern keepers to refresh floor straw regularly, at least in theory. How often that happened depended on labor, money, and enforcement. Standing here, you suspect it has been a while. There is an oddly comforting element to all of this. Once the initial shock fades, the smell tells you that you are not alone. People have passed through, eaten, rested, argued, and slept here. You are breathing in traces of countless small lives intersecting. It is intimate in a way modern spaces rarely are. A small but telling detail drifts back to you. In some regions, herbs were hung from rafters, not just for decoration, but to mask odors. Rosemary, lavender, even mint. You look up, squinting through smoke, and spot a dried bundle tied near a beam. Its scent is faint, overwhelmed, but present. Someone once tried to improve this place, at least a little. You take another sip of ale, and it tastes different now, influenced by the air. Flavor and smell merge. Your senses stop sorting so carefully and begin to blur. This makes the room feel softer, even if nothing else has changed. Fatigue helps too. You are too tired to be offended for long. As the evening deepens, the smells shift again. Fresh sweat joins old as people drink and grow louder. The meat near the fire grows richer as fat continues to drip. Smoke thickens as more wood is added. Your eyes sting slightly, and you blink more often. This was a common complaint in medieval urban life, mentioned in sermons and civic complaints. Smoke inhalation was not an abstract health risk. It was daily experience. You notice that no one comments on the smell. There are no jokes, no grimaces. This silence is instructive. What you might find unbearable is simply normal here. Comfort is defined differently when survival takes precedence. You begin to understand that sleeping here later will mean carrying these smells with you into unconsciousness. They will be your lullaby, whether you like it or not. There is a strange moment where you realize you will remember this smell long after faces blur. Scent is stubborn that way. Even now, centuries later, recreations of medieval spaces often miss this entirely. Clean wood, controlled smoke, sanitized air. The past was louder, darker, and far more fragrant than that. You shift again, adjusting your cloak, aware that it is absorbing everything. There is no avoiding it. Washing will come later, maybe days from now. For tonight, you let go of resistance. You breathe normally. You accept the air as part of the bargain you made when you closed the door behind you. The tavern continues to pulse around you, alive with sound and motion, but the smell is what roots you here most firmly. It wraps around you, familiar now, almost reassuring. You are no longer just passing through, you are part of the room, marked by it already, settling in for a night that will be remembered as much by your nose as by your dreams. Eventually, hunger nudges its way to the front of your awareness. It has been there all along, patient, waiting for you to settle enough to notice it. Now that the room feels less hostile and more predictable, your body reminds you that it has its own needs. Food here is not a menu choice. It is a negotiation between appetite, trust, and caution. You watch what others eat before committing. This is not paranoia. It is learned behavior. A man at the table nearest the hearth tears into a hunk of bread, thick and dark, using it more like a tool than a meal. He drags it through a wooden bowl filled with something steaming and brown. A stew, probably. Root vegetables, maybe some bits of meat. The smell is rich and earthy, and your stomach tightens in response. Bread is everywhere. Dense, heavy loaves baked days ago and meant to last. Medieval bread varied wildly by region and status, but tavern bread was rarely white or soft. Grain shortages, milling limits, and cost all shaped what ended up on the table. What you see here is practical food. It fills you up. It keeps you going. Flavor is secondary. The tavern keeper passes again, and this time you catch their eye deliberately. A brief exchange follows, a nod, a gesture toward the pot by the fire. You understand. There is stew tonight. There is always stew. Ingredients change based on availability, but the form remains. A single pot feeding many mouths. This is not communal out of generosity. It is efficient. You hesitate for a moment, weighing the risks. Water is questionable. Ale is safer, thanks to the brewing process. Food sits somewhere in between. Contemporary writings make it clear that people were aware of spoiled food, even if they did not understand bacteria. Smell, texture, and taste were the tools available. You trust your senses because that is all you have. A bowl is placed in front of you, wood worn smooth from years of use. Steam rises, carrying the scent of onion, herbs, and fat. You stir cautiously with a spoon that has seen better centuries. The contents look thick, consistent. No obvious signs of trouble. You take a small bite. It is hot enough to make you pause, then swallow carefully. It is good, not remarkable, but satisfying. Salted enough to preserve flavor, soft enough to eat without effort. Your body relaxes further with each bite. This is the power of cooked food in a place like this. It signals care, even if minimal. Someone thought about nourishment today. There is an odd detail worth noticing. The stew tastes slightly different with each spoonful. One bite more meaty, another more vegetal. This is not inconsistency. It is the result of constant additions. A pot like this might simmer all day, refreshed as portions are taken out. Ingredients come and go. The pot never truly empties. Some culinary historians have suggested that such perpetual stews could last for days. Whether that is exaggeration or reality remains unclear, but the idea lingers as you eat. You glance around and notice that no one eats alone. Even those who sit quietly share space and food rhythms with others. Bowls are passed, bread is broken and offered, not out of sentiment, but habit. Eating together reduces risk. If everyone eats the same thing, everyone shares the consequences. You sip your ale between bites, appreciating the way it washes down the heaviness of the stew. It is flat by modern standards, barely carbonated, but that is normal. Freshness is relative here. Drink is sustenance as much as pleasure. A conversation nearby drifts toward complaints about bad taverns elsewhere. Undercooked meat, thin ale, unfair prices. These stories serve a purpose. They are warnings, passed orally. You listen without joining in, filing away the idea that reputation matters even in a world without reviews. A tavern that poisons its guests does not last long. As you finish your bowl, you feel warmth spread through you, not just from the food, but from the simple fact of being fed. This was never guaranteed. Famine was a recurring presence in medieval life, shaping memory and behavior. Even in good years, hunger hovered close. Eating well tonight feels like quiet luck. You return the bowl when prompted, careful not to scrape it too clean. That, too, carries meaning. Greed stands out. Moderation blends in. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, then your sleeve, accepting the transfer of grease without fuss. The tavern keeper collects payment later, not immediately. Trust flows both ways here, thin but functional. You are expected to settle up before sleeping or leaving. Until then, you exist in a kind of suspended account. As your hunger fades, fatigue moves back in. Food has taken the edge off, leaving heaviness behind. You lean back against the pillar again, stomach full, cup half empty. You have eaten, you have drunk, you have passed another small test of the night. Soon, attention will shift towards sleep arrangements. For now, you sit in the afterglow of nourishment, listening to the room breathe and chatter, grateful that at least this part of the experience has been kinder than you feared. Once your hunger settles, your awareness stretches outward again, and you start to really look at the people around you. Earlier, they were just noise and movement. Now they resolve into individuals, each carrying their own reasons for being here tonight. And slowly, a more uncomfortable realization forms. These are the people you will be sleeping near. You take them in without staring, a habit learned quickly. Direct attention can be read as challenge or curiosity, and both invite questions. Instead, you observe through reflections in cups, through gaps between shoulders, through moments when someone shifts and reveals more than they intend. Closest to you is a man with hands permanently darkened by work, nails cracked, knuckles swollen, a laborer of some sort. He drinks, slowly, deliberately, like someone counting coins with his mouth. Across from him sits a pair of travelers who look like siblings, sharing a loaf between them. Their cloaks are mended carefully, patches neat and intentional. They travel often, you think. They have learned what lasts. Near the wall, a merchant leans back with forced ease, one arm wrapped around a small chest he has not let out of reach all night. Even when laughing, his fingers stay hooked over the latch. People notice. They always do. There is an unspoken respect for vigilance here. Carelessness attracts attention. Caution discourages it. Medieval inns and taverns did not segregate guests by temperament or trustworthiness. You slept where there was space. Court records and travel accounts make it clear that theft was a known risk, but not an assumed certainty. Most nights passed without incident. Still, stories circulated widely, and everyone adjusted accordingly. You tuck that thought away as you shift your own belongings closer to your body. A woman nearby meets your eye briefly, then looks away. Her posture is alert, not fearful, just prepared. You notice how she positions herself near the wall, limiting access from behind. This is not paranoia. This is experience. Sleeping among strangers requires strategy, especially for those with fewer protections. You are reminded that gender shaped risk in ways that were rarely written down, but always understood. Someone coughs wetly near the hearth, the sound deep and persistent. Another shifts, scratching absently at their sleeve. You become aware of how little personal space exists here, not just socially, but physically. Lice were common companions in places like this, mentioned casually in letters and sermons as nuisances rather than crises. You resist the urge to itch in sympathy. A small detail catches your attention. One man has removed his boots entirely and tucked them under his bench, looped together with a cord. This is not about comfort. Boots are valuable. Leather takes time and skill. Losing them would be disastrous. You make a mental note to do the same later. The tavern hums with low conversations now, energy gradually settling. People speak more quietly, voices thickening as drink takes effect. The sharp edges from earlier have dulled. This is the window where trust briefly expands. You see bread passed to someone who did not ask. A cup refilled without comment. Shared fatigue smooths differences. There is still caution, though. You notice that no one truly turns their back on the room. Even those leaning against walls keep their heads angled, ears open. Complete relaxation is rare here. Sleep will come, but it will be light, broken, easily startled. You think about how different this is from modern travel, where anonymity often means isolation. Here, anonymity means proximity. You are unknown, but you are never alone. That closeness brings both comfort and risk. It also creates a strange equality. Status matters, yes, but sleep flattens many distinctions. Everyone snores. Everyone shifts. Everyone dreams badly sometimes. As the night inches forward, you begin to sense informal groupings forming. People who arrive together sit closer. Regulars cluster by habit. Strangers like you hover at the edges, filling gaps. When sleeping time comes, these patterns will solidify. Where you sit now hints at where you will lie later. There is a quiet, unspoken agreement taking shape. Tonight, you will tolerate each other. You will share warmth, air, and space. You will pretend not to notice certain things. In return, you hope for the same courtesy. You adjust your cloak again, drawing it closer, feeling its weight. This fabric is not just warmth, it is barrier. It is identity. It is something familiar in a room full of unknowns. You ground yourself in that sensation, preparing for what comes next. Around you, the tavern settles into a lower register of sound. Laughter fades. Conversations trail off. Someone yawns openly, unashamed. The fire crackles softer now. The night is turning inward. Soon, the question will not be who you are sleeping near, but how. For now, you sit with the knowledge that sleep here is a shared act, negotiated silently among strangers who may never meet again. You breathe slowly, matching the rhythm of the room, letting yourself become just another tired body waiting for rest. As the night pushes deeper, attention shifts from talk to logistics. The tavern keeper begins clearing space with practiced efficiency, lifting cups, nudging benches, gesturing for people to stand or slide closer together. This is the quiet signal. Sleeping arrangements are about to happen, and they will happen quickly. You follow the movement of the room rather than resisting it. Tables are dragged back just enough to open narrow strips of floor. Benches are turned or pushed flush against walls. There is no ceremony, no announcement. Everyone knows the rhythm. This has happened 100 nights before, and it will happen 100 nights after. You finally see what passes for bedding. Bundles are pulled from corners. Rolled cloth, sacks stuffed with straw, thin pallets that look more like suggestions than mattresses. Someone nearby shakes one out, and a small cloud of dust rises, catching the firelight. You breathe out slowly through your nose, instinctively bracing yourself. This is where romance fully gives up. Most tavern bedding is communal. Straw mattresses, sometimes called palliaces, are shared night after night. The straw inside compresses unevenly, forming ridges and hollows shaped by countless bodies. Written complaints from the period occasionally mention flat or lumpy beds, usually with weary humor rather than outrage. Comfort, like privacy, was relative. A pallet is pushed in your direction. The tavern keeper does not ask if you want it. The assumption is that you do. You lower yourself carefully, testing it with one knee. The straw shifts beneath you, dry and faintly prickly through the fabric. There is a smell too, dusty and vegetal, layered with human presence. Not overpowering, but unmistakable. You sit down fully and feel the truth of it. This will not be restful in the modern sense. The pallet gives slightly, then stops, offering no real support. Your hips sink more than your shoulders. You imagine how this will feel in a few hours. You accept it anyway. The floor would be worse. There is a small, unsettling thought that crosses your mind. What else lives in this bedding? Fleas, lice, mites. Medieval people were well aware of such companions, even if they lacked the language to describe them scientifically. Household advice texts mention shaking bedding, airing it, laying herbs nearby. None of that guarantees anything. You tug your cloak tighter, creating a barrier you know is mostly psychological. A man beside you mutters as he settles onto his own pallet, shifting back and forth to find a tolerable position. His movements make the straw rustle softly, a sound that will soon become familiar. Around the room, others do the same. The tavern fills with this dry, whispering noise, like grass in a light wind. Blankets appear next. Rough wool, heavy and coarse, passed along without comment. You take one and drape it over your legs. The fabric scratches faintly against your skin. It smells of lanolin, smoke, and old use. This blanket has lived many lives before touching you. You notice that no one fully undresses. Boots may come off, belts loosened, but layers stay on. Clothing doubles as bedding. It is insulation, padding, and security all at once. Removing too much feels risky, both physically and socially. You keep your boots on for now, copying what you saw earlier, and slide them closer together under the edge of the pallet. As you adjust, you become aware of how close everyone is, knees nearly touching, shoulders inches apart. When someone shifts, you feel it through the floor, through the straw, through shared vibration. Sleep here is not solitary. it is collective. There is a small detail that feels almost tender. Someone offers part of their blanket to the person beside them without a word. Not generosity exactly. Practicality. Shared warmth matters more than strict ownership. Wool blankets were valuable, but cold was more persuasive. You lie back slowly, staring up into the dark beams overhead. The firelight dances faintly, casting moving shadows that stretch and shrink. Soot flakes drift down occasionally, landing unnoticed. You blink slowly, letting your eyes adjust. There is no pillow. You roll a spare piece of clothing under your head, arranging it carefully. The ground presses up against you, firm and unyielding. Your body begins its quiet argument with the surface, searching for a position that hurts less. Eventually, you find something acceptable. As you settle, the sounds of the room soften further. Voices drop to murmurs. Someone coughs, then falls quiet. The fiddle has stopped. Only the fire remains, crackling gently, punctuated by the occasional groan of wood shifting in the building's frame. You think briefly about the idea of sleep itself. In the medieval world, rest was not always expected to be continuous. Waking in the night was normal. People prayed, talked, or simply lay awake before sleeping again. Knowing that takes some pressure off. You do not have to disappear into unconsciousness all at once. You pull the blanket higher, tuck your hands close, and breathe in slowly. The pallet creaks softly beneath you. It is not comfortable, but it is shelter. It is warmth. It is as good as it gets tonight. Around you, bodies settle into stillness, one by one. The tavern exhales, releasing the last of the day. You close your eyes, not expecting much, but ready to accept whatever kind of rest this place is willing to offer. Lying there, you quickly understand that privacy is not something you have lost tonight. It is something you never brought with you in the first place. The pallet beneath you exists in full view of the room, with nothing separating your body from anyone else's, except a few inches of straw and habit. You become acutely aware of how exposed you are. Every movement feels noticeable. When you shift your leg, the straw rustles. When you adjust your blanket, wool scrapes softly against fabric. These sounds feel louder now, magnified by the quiet settling over the tavern. You pause after each adjustment, waiting to see if anyone reacts. No one does. This tells you something important. Everyone is too busy managing their own discomfort to monitor yours. There are no screens, no curtains, no partitions. At best, a bench or a chest creates a low barrier that hides nothing above the waist. Sleeping here means accepting that your body is visible in outline and motion. Modesty survives in posture rather than walls. People turn slightly away from one another, eyes close deliberately. A kind of mutual blindness sets in, agreed upon without words. This arrangement was common. In many medieval inns and taverns, shared sleeping spaces were the norm, even for people of means. Private chambers existed, but they were limited and expensive. Travel diaries and legal testimonies suggest that most travelers expected to sleep among strangers unless they paid dearly to avoid it. Tonight, you are participating in that expectation. You notice how belongings are positioned with care. Bags are tucked under pallets. Cloaks are folded in ways that keep pockets pressed against bodies. Hands rest on bundles instinctively. This is how people create personal territory in a space that offers none. You mirror the behavior without thinking, sliding your own things closer, anchoring yourself. The lack of privacy does something strange to your sense of time. Without a room to retreat into, there is no clear boundary between evening and night. The tavern does not switch off. It simply dims. Even now, a few people remain upright, whispering softly, finishing drinks, or staring into the fire. Sleep happens gradually, unevenly. A small, telling detail catches your attention. One man turns his face toward the wall before closing his eyes, pressing his forehead against the wood. It is not comfortable. It is intentional. This is how he creates a sense of separation, however thin. You consider doing the same, then decide against it. The straw beneath your head is barely tolerable as it is. There is also the matter of sound. Without privacy, noise becomes intimate. You hear breathing patterns clearly. Slow, deep breaths. Shallow, uneven ones. A soft snore begins somewhere nearby, stops, then starts again. No one complains. This is expected. Night noises are part of the shared experience. You think briefly about how modern life equates privacy with safety. Doors lock, curtains close. Here, safety comes from numbers. Many witnesses, many ears. In a crowded space, wrongdoing is harder to hide. This belief was common enough to influence sleeping arrangements, especially for travelers. Whether it truly worked is harder to say. The logic feels sound, at least lying here among so many bodies. You feel heat building under the blanket as shared warmth accumulates. Wool traps it efficiently. Soon, you push the blanket down slightly, exposing your arms. Someone beside you does the same. Bodies negotiate temperature together, unconsciously adjusting until a rough balance is found. There is an odd calm that settles over you as acceptance sets in. You stop wishing for solitude. You stop measuring distance. The room becomes a single organism, breathing slowly. Individual edges blur. In this moment, you are not a traveler or a stranger. You are just another person trying to sleep. You close your eyes again, letting the darkness press in. Firelight flickers behind your lids, casting shifting shapes. Your thoughts slow, not because you feel secure, exactly, but because there is nothing left to decide. You are here. This is how it works. The tavern creaks softly as the building cools. Wood contracts. Straw shifts. Somewhere, a sleeper murmurs, then goes quiet. The lack of privacy no longer feels like exposure. It feels like inclusion in a temporary, fragile community formed by night and necessity. You breathe in, breathe out, and allow yourself to sink a little deeper into the palate. Tomorrow will bring movement, light, and separation. For now, you rest in plain sight, held by the shared agreement that everyone will look away. Just as your body begins to loosen, the night reminds you that silence here is relative. The sounds do not stop, they simply change character. Earlier, noise was sharp and social. Now it turns inward, slower, more personal, and somehow more unsettling because of it. The fire becomes the loudest thing in the room. Logs shift and settle with dull pops. Embers collapse softly. Each sound echoes in the low ceiling, amplified by the stillness. You focus on it at first, letting the rhythm ground you. Crackle, pause, crackle again. It almost works like a heartbeat. Then other sounds layer in. Breathing is the first. Dozens of people, each with their own pace. Some breathe deep and steady, the sound barely audible. Others wheeze slightly, a reminder of years spent inhaling smoke and dust. You hear a sudden intake of breath nearby, followed by a long exhale that trembles. Someone is already deep asleep. A snore erupts unexpectedly a few pallets away, loud enough to make you flinch. It is followed by a brief silence, then another snore, longer this time. No one intervenes. This is accepted. In a room like this, noise at night is a given. Complaining would only draw attention to yourself. The building itself adds its voice. Wood expands and contracts as temperatures shift. A beam creaks overhead. Somewhere near the back, something scurries briefly, then goes still. You tell yourself it is a mouse. This is not reassurance so much as realism. Rodents were common companions in medieval structures, and taverns offered abundant scraps. You adjust slightly, careful not to disturb your neighbors. The pallet responds with a soft rustle. Immediately, you freeze, listening. No reaction. You relax again. This constant awareness is tiring in its own way, but your body is learning the limits of acceptable movement. A cough cuts through the quiet, deep and rattling. It echoes longer than it should. The person coughs again, then clears their throat. After a moment, they settle. Respiratory illnesses were widespread, aggravated by smoke-filled interiors and crowded living. Nighttime was often when symptoms made themselves known. Lying here, you cannot ignore that reality. You begin to notice smaller sounds too. The scrape of wool against straw as someone shifts. The faint clink of a cup being set down by someone still awake. A whispered exchange near the hearth. Words too low to make out. Even in rest, the tavern never fully sleeps. At first, these noises keep your mind alert. You catalogue them, anticipate them. Then something changes. The repetition dulls their edges. Snoring becomes part of the background. Creaks lose their ability to startle. Your mind stops assigning meaning to every sound. This is how sleep arrives here. Not suddenly, but by erosion. Awareness wears thin. There is a moment where you drift, then snap back awake as a bench shifts nearby. Someone getting up, perhaps to relieve themselves outside or near the wall. Bodily needs do not pause for night. You hear footsteps retreat, then return. The door opens briefly, letting in a wash of colder air and distant night sounds. An owl, maybe. Wind in the trees. Then the door closes again, sealing the tavern back into itself. You think about how vulnerable this moment would feel if you were alone. Instead, surrounded by bodies and sound, it feels oddly contained. Danger feels less likely when it would be witnessed. This belief shaped how people tolerated shared sleeping, even when it was uncomfortable. Your eyelids grow heavier, sounds stretch out, blur together. The fire crackle slows, breathing sinks. The snore continues, relentless, but no longer sharp. It fades into the distance, like waves on a shore. You feel yourself slipping, hovering at the edge. Thoughts come and go without fully forming. Images drift in and out. Road dust, firelight, the smell of stew. Your body surrenders first, muscles releasing one by one. The last thing you register clearly is the collective presence of the room, the quiet agreement to endure the night together. Then even that softens, and the tavern sounds carry you gently into a shallow, fragile sleep. You wake, without fully waking. Something shifts in the light, and your mind surfaces just enough to notice it. The fire has burned down lower now, no longer roaring, just a steady glow that throws long, restless shapes across the room. Shadows stretch and collapse along the beams overhead, crawling slowly as embers settle. Even with your eyes half closed, you can feel the movement. Firelight changes faces. Earlier, it revealed expressions sharp with drink and fatigue. Now it smooths them into something stranger. Cheekbones look deeper, noses longer, eyes become dark hollows when someone turns the wrong way. You catch a glimpse of a face across from you and have a brief, disorienting moment where you do not recognize it as human. Then the person shifts, and the illusion breaks. You exhale quietly. This play of light is familiar to medieval nights. Before candles became cheap and widespread, fire was the main source of illumination after dark. People lived with shadows as companions. Sermons and folk stories from the period often reference how firelight could deceive the senses, turning ordinary things into omens. Lying here, half asleep, you understand why those beliefs stuck. A sleeper near the hearth rolls over, and the fire flares slightly as air rushes in. For a second, the room brightens. You see details you had missed before. The uneven plaster on the walls, a stain near the ceiling that might be smoke or might be something older, the rough stitching on a nearby cloak. Then, the light dims again, and everything softens. You feel the warmth of the fire unevenly. One side of your body is comfortable, the other is cooler, touched by drafts sneaking through cracks in the walls. You shift, instinctively angling yourself to catch more heat. The movement sends a ripple through the straw beneath you. Someone nearby sighs but does not wake. There is something hypnotic about watching shadows move when you are this tired. They no longer look threatening. They feel almost gentle, like slow breathing. Your thoughts loosen their grip. You stop questioning what you see. You simply let it happen. In the Middle Ages, people associated firelight with both safety and danger. It kept beasts and cold away, but it could also destroy an entire building if neglected. Nighttime fires were a real fear, especially in wooden towns. You notice, even now, that the hearth has been banked carefully, stones placed just so, ash spread to control the burn. Someone took time to make sure this place would still be standing by morning. A faint flicker catches your attention again. This time, it is not the fire. A candle stub near the wall burns low, its flame trembling. It throws a narrow beam of light upward, making the wall seem to ripple. You wonder who lit it and why. Perhaps someone preferred a little light near their palate. Perhaps it was left burning deliberately, a small guard against darkness. Your mind drifts towards superstition, not in a serious way, just idly. Medieval people filled nights like this with stories of spirits and wandering souls, of things that moved when people slept close together. Those stories were less about belief and more about explanation. When shadows move and sounds echo, the mind looks for meaning. You blink slowly, and the images smear together. The ceiling beams blur into the dark. The faces become shapes again. You feel yourself sliding deeper, thoughts dissolving before they fully form. A log shifts in the hearth, sending a brief shower of sparks upward. You flinch, then relax when nothing follows. The room remains intact. The night continues. The shadows stretch one last time, then settle. Your breathing deepens. The firelight fades behind your eyelids, and the tavern returns to darkness, holding you in a fragile pocket of warmth and half-remembered dreams. Sometime later, you wake again, not because of noise this time, but because of a thought that has worked its way up from deeper layers of your mind: safety. Or rather, how people here try to create it while they sleep. You do not move at first. You let your eyes open slowly, just enough to take in shapes. The room is darker now. The fire has sunk lower still, glowing faintly like a watchful eye that refuses to close. Most bodies lie still, wrapped in blankets and cloaks, faces turned away or buried in fabric. Then you notice the small things. A hand rests on the hilt of a knife near a sleeping man's hip, not gripping it, just touching it, as if reassurance alone is enough. Another person has tucked a short blade beneath their pallet, close enough to reach without sitting up. These are not signs of imminent violence. They are habits, learned responses to uncertainty. Knives here are tools first. Eating, cutting rope, repairing things. But at night, they become something else too. Travel accounts and legal records suggest that most people carried some kind of blade as a matter of course. Not because they expected trouble every night, but because not having one was a disadvantage if trouble did come. You feel the weight of your own possessions and consider what you have within reach. Even if you own nothing sharp, you instinctively arrange yourself so that your hands are free. Locks are rare here. The door has been barred, but only with a thick beam slid into place. It would slow someone down, not stop them entirely. Chests, when present, are small and sturdy, often locked with simple mechanisms that discourage casual tampering rather than determined theft. People rely less on hardware and more on proximity. Sleep close to what matters. Keep it under you or against you. You become aware of another layer of protection: faith. A few murmured words drift through the quiet. Someone whispers a prayer before turning over. Another makes a small sign with their hand, barely visible in the dim light. These gestures are not dramatic. They are habitual, almost automatic. Night has always been a liminal time, and even the practical hedge their bets with something intangible. It is difficult to know how much comfort these rituals provided. Some people surely believed deeply, others likely treated them as insurance. Either way, they were part of how people prepared themselves to let go of consciousness in an unpredictable world. You lie still, listening, noticing how the room holds together. The presence of others does not erase risk, but it spreads it out. No single sleeper is alone. No single person stands out. This collective vulnerability becomes a kind of shield. A faint clink sounds near the wall as someone shifts and a metal buckle taps wood. You tense for a moment, then relax when nothing follows. This pattern repeats itself. Alert, assessment, release. Your body is tired of it, but it persists anyway. You think about how modern sleep often depends on isolation. Closed doors, quiet rooms. Here, safety is social. Witnesses matter. Familiarity matters. Even strangers become part of the equation simply by being present. Your eyelids grow heavy again. The knife hilts and whispered prayers fade from focus. You draw your blanket closer, tucking your hands beneath it, grounding yourself in the simple sensation of fabric and warmth. Whatever protections exist tonight, they are enough. People are sleeping. The tavern holds. You let your eyes close once more, trusting that if something stirs, the room will stir with it. Until then, you rest inside this fragile balance of caution and exhaustion, drifting back towards sleep with the quiet confidence that for now, at least, you are not alone. As your thoughts slow again, another awareness drifts in quietly, almost academically, the way some realizations do when you are too tired to react emotionally. Where you lie is not random. It never was. Even in sleep, position reflects who you are, how you are read, and what the room assumes about you. You notice it first by contrast. Near the hearth, the pallets are more tightly packed. Those spots are warmer, better protected from drafts, and closer to the center of activity. People there tend to look more established. Regulars, locals, those who know the tavern keeper well enough to claim favorable ground without argument. Heat is comfort, but it is also status. Farther from the fire, closer to doors and walls, bodies are more spaced, as much as space allows. Travelers, the unfamiliar, those without relationships to trade for warmth. You are here, on the edge, not excluded, just placed where the room expects you to be. This is not cruelty, it is habit, reinforced over generations. Medieval society organized itself constantly through proximity. Who stood near whom at church, who sat closer to the Lord at meals. Where someone slept in a shared space followed the same logic. Social rank did not disappear at night. It softened, but it remained. Gender shapes this too, quietly but firmly. You notice that women tend to sleep closer to walls, or among known companions when possible. Not always, but often enough to be noticeable. This positioning limits approach from behind and offers some psychological shelter, even if physical protection remains minimal. No one announces this arrangement. It emerges through shared understanding. There are exceptions. A woman near the hearth snores louder than anyone else, sprawled comfortably, unbothered by proximity. Perhaps she is known here. Perhaps she is traveling with protection. Perhaps she simply does not care. The room allows for variance, but patterns still dominate. Clothing plays a role as well. Better fabrics, finer stitching, cleaner boots, subtly adjust how much space someone is given. You see people instinctively leave a little more room around those who look wealthier or better armed, not out of respect alone, but caution. Power announces itself quietly. There is a lingering question in historical writing about how rigid these distinctions were once people lay down together. Some evidence suggests that sleep blurred boundaries. Other accounts imply that hierarchy followed people even into dreams. Lying here, you suspect both are true. The rules loosen, but they do not vanish. You shift slightly, feeling the straw compress under you, and become aware of the person beside you doing the same. Your movements mirror one another unconsciously. A small dance of adjustment. Shared space demands cooperation, even among strangers. No one speaks now. If someone wakes, they do so silently, careful not to disturb others. This restraint feels earned. Earlier chaos has drained away, leaving behind something calmer and more fragile. You think briefly about what it would mean to sleep differently, alone, behind a door, with silence as thick as the dark. That kind of rest belongs to another world, another century. Tonight, sleep is negotiated, communal, shaped by who you are and how you fit into the whole. Your breathing deepens again. The awareness of status and placement fades, replaced by the heavier pull of exhaustion. Whatever category you occupy here, it no longer matters. The night treats everyone the same in the end. You let go of analysis, letting the room hold you where it has placed you, and drift once more towards sleep. Sleep does not fully take you. Instead, you hover in that shallow space where awareness drifts in and out, and in that space, you notice movement that does not belong to the sleepers. The servants are still awake. They move differently from everyone else, quieter, purposeful. Their steps are measured to avoid the loose boards that creak. You glimpse one slipping between pallets with a bucket, careful not to bump a foot or knee. Another pauses near the hearth, poking the embers just enough to keep them alive without brightening the room. This is their night, stretched thin between the guests' rest and the coming morning. Tavern staff rarely enjoyed uninterrupted sleep. Account books and household ordinances show that servants were expected to clean, prepare food, tend animals, and stay alert for trouble even after guests lay down. You realize that while you are allowed to surrender to exhaustion, they are not. Their rest will come later, in fragments, if at all. A young server crouches near a table, wiping up a spill you did not even remember happening. The cloth in their hand is dark with old stains. They rinse it quickly in a bucket, wring it out, and move on. The work is repetitive, almost meditative. There is no audience now, no expectation of thanks, just routine. You notice how the servants avoid eye contact with sleepers, not out of fear, but respect. There is an unspoken rule that once someone lies down, they are no longer part of the social exchange. To wake a guest unnecessarily would invite anger, or worse, blame if something later goes wrong. A small sound pulls your attention. From the back of the tavern, a door opens softly. Cool air slips in again, carrying the scent of night. One of the servants steps outside briefly, perhaps to check animals or empty waste. Taverns often kept stables or pens close by, and caring for them did not stop at sunset. The door closes, and warmth settles back into place. You think about how invisible this labor often is in stories of the past. Travelers remember food and beds, but not the hands that made them possible. Yet without these quiet figures moving through the dark, the tavern would fall apart by morning. There is a faint scrape as a bench is adjusted, pushed closer to a wall to clear space. The sound seems loud in the stillness, but no one wakes. The servants have learned exactly how much noise is acceptable. This knowledge is practical, earned through mistakes. A tired sigh escapes one of them near the hearth. They pause, rubbing their lower back, then straighten and continue. Physical strain is part of the job. Long hours on hard floors, lifting heavy pots, breathing smoke. Complaints appear occasionally in court cases and petitions, hinting at injuries and exhaustion, though they rarely changed much. You feel a brief pang of guilt, then let it go. This is not a moral exchange. This is how the system works. You paid for shelter and food. Their labor is folded into that transaction, whether acknowledged or not. Gradually, their movements slow. Tasks complete themselves one by one. The bucket is set aside. The cloth is draped over a peg. The fire is banked for the final time. At last, they choose places to rest. Not on pallets like the guests, but on benches, near walls, or beside the hearth where warmth lingers. One servant lowers themselves carefully, stretching out with a groan they do not bother to suppress. Another curls up near the fire, head on a folded sack. They do not undress. They do not linger. Sleep, when it comes, must be taken quickly. The tavern finally stills. Everyone who can sleep is sleeping. Everyone who must remain alert has done what they can. You feel the room settle into its deepest quiet yet, held together by the exhausted balance of bodies and labor. With nothing left to watch, your mind releases its grip, and you sink more fully into rest, carried by the knowledge that even now, someone has been keeping the night in order. A sound near your feet pulls you back toward the surface of sleep. Not loud, just a soft shuffle, followed by a faint huff of breath. Your eyes open slowly, adjusting to the dark, and you realize you are not alone in the way you usually mean it. Animals share this space too. A shape moves between pallets with quiet confidence, weaving through sleeping bodies as if it has memorized the layout. A dog, medium-sized, ribs visible beneath a rough coat. It pauses, sniffing at a scrap near someone's hand, then moves on when it finds nothing worth taking. No one stirs. This dog belongs here as much as anyone. In medieval taverns, animals were not guests, they were co-workers. Dogs kept rodents at bay and provided warmth when they curled up near sleepers. Cats did the same, though you see none tonight. Somewhere deeper in the building, you hear a low grunt and the rustle of straw. Pigs were sometimes housed close to kitchens, especially in rural inns. The line between human and animal space was thin. The dog circles once, then settles near the hearth, lowering itself with a satisfied sigh. Its presence feels oddly reassuring. Animals are honest. They react to danger faster than people do. You register this instinctively, even half asleep. A chicken clucks softly from somewhere near the back, offended by nothing in particular. It will be quieter by morning, but for now, it exists on its own schedule. Livestock slept when it could. Taverns adapted. There is movement above you too, a faint scratching in the rafters. Small feet, light and quick. Mice most likely. Rats possibly. You do not dwell on it. People in this period understood that vermin were part of life. Traps existed. Cats helped. Total elimination was unrealistic. Acceptance filled the gap where control failed. You feel something brush against your blanket and tense before realizing it is just the dog shifting position. Its flank presses briefly against your leg, warm and solid. It stays there. You decide not to move. Shared warmth is welcome, no matter the source. The smell changes subtly with the presence of animals, earthier, sharper, straw and fur layered into the already complex air. It does not bother you anymore. Your senses have given up on protest. Animals bring noise too. Occasional snorts, soft whines during dreams, the click of claws on wood when one repositions. These sounds blend into the nightscape, no more intrusive than breathing or fire. You think about how modern spaces draw strict boundaries between people and animals. Here, survival encouraged cooperation. Animals earned their keep. They were tolerated, sometimes valued, rarely sentimentalized. Tonight, they are simply part of the room. The dog near you lifts its head once, ears twitching. Somewhere outside, something moves. Wind, perhaps. or another animal passing by. After a moment, the dog lowers its head again, satisfied that all is well. That simple gesture calms you more than you expect. If the dog is not worried, neither are you. Your body sinks deeper into the pallet. The warmth beside you anchors you. Whatever else this night holds, it holds it for all of you together. Sleep takes you again, layered with the quiet presence of animals breathing and dreaming alongside you, guardians of scraps and shadows, indifferent but reliable companions in the dark. Your sleep fractures again, not because of sound or movement, but because of a creeping awareness that settles into your thoughts. Dirt, illness, things you cannot see. In the quiet of the night, the mind wanders toward invisible threats. You lie still, staring into the dimness, thinking about what lingers in the air and on the straw beneath you. Smoke, sweat, breath, animal presence, all of it mixes, circulates, and settles. People in this period did not know about germs, but they were far from ignorant. They knew sickness spread. They noticed patterns. Certain places made people ill more often. Certain smells were associated with danger. Bad air was blamed for many ailments. The idea that foul smells caused disease shaped urban planning, medical advice, and daily habits. Opening windows, burning herbs, and avoiding stagnant spaces were common recommendations. In a tavern like this, such advice had limits. Windows were few, fire was necessary, crowding was unavoidable. You become aware of how close faces are even now. Mouths open slightly as people breathe in sleep. Coughs earlier in the night echo faintly in memory. Plague was not an abstract historical event for medieval people. It was a recurring terror, returning in waves. Even outside epidemic years, fever and infection were constant companions. You wonder briefly who in this room has travelled recently, who came from another town, another region. Trade routes carried goods, but they also carried sickness. Records from ports and market towns show repeated attempts to control movement during outbreaks, though enforcement was uneven. Tonight, no one is asking where you have been. The straw beneath you itches faintly. You shift and then stop, worried about drawing attention. Bedding like this was rarely cleaned thoroughly. At best, it was aired out. At worst, it was simply reused until it fell apart. People complained about this, but alternatives were scarce. You remind yourself that millions slept this way and lived. Many did not. Both facts coexist. A thought surfaces that feels almost ironic. You are more concerned about illness now, lying in relative safety, than you were earlier when theft or violence felt more immediate. The night rearranges priorities. Someone nearby scratches in their sleep, fingers moving absently through fabric. Another coughs again, softer this time. You tense, then release. There is nothing to be done. Worry does not change exposure. You think about remedies. Garlic, vinegar, strong drink. These were believed to cleanse the body or ward off sickness. Ale, at least, is something you have. You take comfort in small rituals, even when logic is thin. Modern researchers still disagree on how effective some medieval health practices truly were. Some likely helped by accident. Others offered psychological relief more than physical protection. In moments like this, that distinction hardly matters. Comfort counts. You draw your blanket a little higher, covering your mouth and nose slightly. Not enough to suffocate, just enough to feel shielded. Someone else does the same nearby, mirroring you without knowing it. Shared instinct again. The tavern feels warmer now, air heavy and still. You focus on slow breathing, keeping it shallow and calm. Your body follows, settling into a quieter rhythm. Eventually, the anxiety softens. Fatigue reasserts itself. Illness may come tomorrow, or not at all. Tonight, the only task is rest. You let the thoughts drift away, dissolving into the background hum of the room. Whatever unseen dangers exist, they exist beyond your control. The tavern holds you as it holds everyone else, imperfect but enduring. Sleep returns, thin but real, carrying you through the remainder of the night without further worry. At some point in the night, cold becomes more persuasive than caution. You are not sure exactly when it happens. There is no clear moment, just the slow realization that warmth has shifted, pooled elsewhere, leaving parts of you exposed. The fire has burned lower again. Bodies have settled and rolled. Heat is no longer evenly shared. You feel a blanket edge tug gently near your shoulder. Not a grab, not a theft, just a careful adjustment as the person beside you tries to trap warmth more effectively. You do not resist. Instead, you shift slightly, allowing the wool to cover both of you better. This is how it works here. No words, no eye contact, just small negotiations conducted half asleep. Shared blankets were common in places like this, not as an act of intimacy, but necessity. Wool was expensive, cold was dangerous. Surviving the night mattered more than personal boundaries. Household records and moral writings from the period occasionally mention shared bedding with mild disapproval, but they also acknowledge reality. Warmth wins. You become aware of how heat moves between bodies. Someone turns away, and you feel the loss immediately. Another sleeper shifts closer, filling the gap without meaning to. The pallet beneath you compresses further, straw cracking softly as it adjusts. Your breathing syncs briefly with the person beside you, then drifts out of rhythm again. There is something oddly calming about this closeness, not comforting exactly, but grounding. It reminds you that you are part of a group trying to get through the same dark hours. Everyone is tired, everyone is cold, everyone is willing to compromise a little. A hand brushes against your sleeve accidentally and freezes. You feel the tension in the pause. Then the hand withdraws slowly, deliberately. Boundaries exist here, even in the dark. They are enforced quietly, with restraint rather than confrontation. You pull the blanket higher, tucking it under your chin. The wool scratches, but you no longer care. Sensation dulls as sleep deepens. The weight of the blanket, shared and heavy, presses you gently into the pallet. This pressure feels almost reassuring, like being held in place. Somewhere nearby, someone mutters in their sleep, a word you cannot make out, a name, perhaps. Dreams leak into the shared space, then fade. You drift close to dreaming yourself, images flickering without structure. You think briefly about how strange it would feel to explain this night to someone else, how sleep here is not private or controlled, but negotiated moment by moment, how comfort is collective, how rest depends on others, even strangers. The thought dissolves before it finishes forming. Your body no longer wants analysis. It wants stillness. You let the blanket remain where it is. You let the shared warmth do its quiet work. Outside, the night continues, indifferent to your small adjustments. Inside, the tavern breathes slowly, holding you and everyone else in a fragile balance of bodies, wool, and exhaustion. Sleep finally deepens, heavier now, less easily disturbed. For a while, you stop noticing where you end and others begin. There is only warmth, darkness, and the soft, steady pull of rest. The night does not pass cleanly. It never does in a place like this. Just when sleep thickens and feels almost solid, something breaks through it. A sharp sound cuts the air, not loud enough to be panic, but too sudden to ignore. Wood knocking against wood, a bench leg scraping the floor. Your eyes open instantly, heart jumping before your mind catches up. Around you, bodies stir, blankets shift. Someone mutters irritably. A figure moves near the center of the room, unsteady, half upright. A man, swaying slightly, one hand braced on a table that is no longer there. He squints, confused, trying to place himself. Drink has carried him further than intended. This is not unusual. Taverns expected these moments. The interruption is inconvenient, not alarming. He takes a step and nearly trips over a pallet. Someone curses softly. Another sleeper rolls away just in time. The man freezes, realizing suddenly how many eyes are on him. Even in the dark, shame sobers faster than ale. He mutters an apology that no one fully hears, and fumbles his way toward the wall. The tavern keeper appears almost immediately, rising from a bench near the hearth. They move with practiced speed, placing a steadying hand on the man's shoulder and guiding him back down. No scolding, no drama, just quiet correction, order restored. You exhale slowly, realizing you had been holding your breath. Sleep tries to return, but it takes time. Your body remains alert, listening for more disruption. In a shared space, any movement could matter. You catalogue sounds again, assessing which are safe to ignore. Another interruption follows not long after. A whispered argument near the door. Two voices, low and tense. You catch fragments. Coins. Mourning. Payment. Someone does not want to wait. The tavern keeper intervenes again, voice firm but controlled. The argument dissolves into silence. These are the moments no one advertises when describing tavern life. The small frictions, the negotiations, the reminders that this space holds many lives briefly intersecting, not all of them easy. There is also the less visible interruption. A sleeper nearby begins to shiver, breath coming quicker. You feel the movement through the pallet. Without thinking, you adjust the blanket again, sharing more warmth. The shivering slows. The body settles. Crisis averted without words. You are aware now of how thin the line is between rest and wakefulness here. Sleep comes in layers, easily peeled back by sound or movement. People adapt. They learn to sink back down quickly, to forgive interruptions as part of the night. Gradually, the room stills again. The tavern keeper returns to their place. The fire glows low and steady. Breathing evens out across the room. You close your eyes once more, letting exhaustion pull you down. The interruptions fade into memory almost immediately, absorbed by the larger weight of the night. This is not a place for uninterrupted sleep. It is a place for endurance. Your body accepts that, finally, and slips back into rest, lighter than before but steady enough to carry you toward morning. Sleep returns, but it is not empty. It fills with images that feel thin and close to the surface, the kind of dreams shaped by where you are rather than who you are. Firelight bleeds into them. Shadows stretch in unfamiliar ways. Sounds from the room slip through and weave themselves into half-formed stories. You dream that you are still awake, still lying on the pallet, but the room is slightly different. The ceiling feels lower. The walls lean inward. Faces appear where there should be beams. You recognize no one, yet none of them feel threatening. They simply watch, patient and quiet. This kind of dreaming was familiar to medieval sleepers. Night was thought to be a porous time when the boundary between the physical and unseen worlds thinned. Folk beliefs warned of spirits that wandered while people slept, of visions that carried meaning or danger. Not everyone believed these stories fully, but many respected them enough to leave space for them in the mind. You stir slightly, half aware of your body, half pulled by the dream. A voice murmurs nearby, not directed at you, just spilling out of someone else's sleep. The words make no sense, but your dreaming mind grabs them and twists them into significance. Suddenly, the figures in your dream lean closer. Your heart rate ticks up. You feel the familiar edge of fear, then the weight of the blanket, the warmth beside you, the steady breathing of others. Reality presses back in, grounding you. The dream loosens its grip. You drift again, and this time the images soften. You walk down a road that smells like smoke and bread. The tavern appears ahead, welcoming instead of foreboding. Inside, people nod as you pass. Faces blurred but friendly. The fire burns steadily, not flickering wildly. Safety replaces tension. Dreams like this were sometimes taken seriously. People discussed them over morning meals, looking for meaning or warning. Religious guides cautioned against reading too much into dreams, yet also acknowledged that they could reflect the soul's state. You are too tired to interpret anything. You accept the images as they come. A sudden creak in the building pulls you closer to waking again. In the dream, it becomes thunder. In reality, it is just wood shifting in the cold. Your mind corrects itself slowly. You turn your head slightly, cheek pressing into folded cloth. The rough texture anchors you. You breathe in the familiar mix of smoke, wool, and straw. The tavern asserts itself again, solid and real. The dreams thin out after that. They lose their sharp edges, becoming vague impressions rather than stories. You float through them without effort. Time stretches and folds. You have no sense of how long you sleep, only that you do. At some point, you cross into deeper rest. Thoughts fade completely. The tavern continues around you, but it no longer reaches you. Fire dims, bodies shift, animals breathe. None of it breaks through. For a while, you sleep the way people always have in places like this. Not deeply, not securely, but enough. You wake with the uneasy sense that something is wrong, even before your mind can name it. Your eyes open slowly, and for a moment you are disoriented, unsure whether you are still dreaming. The darkness feels thicker than before, the air heavier, as if it has settled closer to the floor. Then you smell it. Not the usual blend of smoke and bodies, but something sharper, more urgent. Burning wood, Yes, but hotter than it should be. Your heart speeds up before reason intervenes. Fire was always the great fear of the night. Wooden buildings, thatched roofs, open hearths. Everyone knew the stories. Entire streets lost before dawn. You lift your head slightly and scan the room. The hearth still glows, banked low and controlled. No sparks jumping, no flames climbing where they should not. Relief washes over you, followed by embarrassment at your own panic. But the tension does not fully release. The fear lingers, because even a small mistake here could mean disaster. People in this period took nighttime fire seriously. City laws regulated hearths, curfews, and even how late candles could burn. Taverns were watched especially closely. One careless ember could erase livelihoods in hours. That fear sits deep in your chest now, inherited across centuries. You listen carefully. No shouting, no scrambling. The tavern keeper is still asleep, breathing steadily. If there were danger, they would be moving already. You let yourself sink back down, chastened. Another thought surfaces as you settle. Fire is not the only threat that keeps people half awake. Flooding claims its share of nights too. Taverns near rivers or low ground learn to fear heavy rain as much as flame. You remember passing a ditch on the way in, water glinting faintly. Was it full? Is rain falling now? You strain your ears. Nothing but the familiar night sounds. No rush of water, no distant thunder. The building remains still, solid around you. Your imagination retreats again, though reluctantly. There is also the quieter danger, the one no one talks about easily. Collapse. Buildings like this age unevenly. Beams rot. Foundations shift. Overcrowding strains, floors never designed for such weight. Medieval records include occasional mentions of tavern accidents, floors giving way under packed crowds. Rare, but memorable when they happened. You feel the pallet beneath you, firm enough for now. The beam overhead creaks softly, then settles. Wood speaks constantly if you listen to it long enough. Tonight, it is only talking to itself. These thoughts circle your mind, not because danger is present, but because night invites them. When you lie still long enough, the brain reaches for worst-case stories. People in the past did the same, though their list of fears differed slightly from yours. Fire, flood, collapse, illness, violence, none of them far-fetched, all of them survivable, most nights. A sleeper nearby stirs and lets out a long breath. You hear the dog by the hearth shift and resettle, nails clicking briefly on wood. If animals are calm, you remind yourself, things are likely fine. This logic feels ancient, instinctive. You think about how taverns tried to manage these risks. Hearths were built of stone, raised and contained. Roofs were patched constantly. Buckets of water were kept nearby, not decorative but functional. None of this eliminated danger. It reduced it enough to make sleep possible. The smell of smoke shifts slightly as a draft moves through the room. Somewhere, a shutter rattles faintly. Wind, perhaps. Outside, the world continues, indifferent to your small fears. You notice how your body responds to all this. Muscles tense, then relax. Breathing quickens, then slows. This cycle has probably played out countless times before, in this room and others like it. People waking briefly, checking for disaster, finding none, and returning to rest. Eventually, your thoughts lose urgency. The dangers recede back into abstraction. You accept that vigilance has limits. You cannot watch the fire and the walls and the weather all night. Someone else has done what they can. Now it is your turn to trust. You let your head sink back into the folded cloth beneath it. The blanket presses down, grounding you again. Warmth spreads slowly across your back as another sleeper shifts closer. Shared heat returns, steady and reassuring. The tavern holds. The fire behaves. The roof stays overhead. The night passes without catastrophe. As you drift back towards sleep, the fears do not vanish completely. They simply lose their sharpness. They become part of the background hum, like the crackle of embers or the creak of wood. Known risks, acknowledged, and set aside. Sleep finds you again, deeper this time, because your mind has exhausted its list of disasters and found none worth staying awake for. When sleep comes back this time, it feels different, heavier, less fragile. The interruptions fade into the background, and your body settles into a rhythm that feels almost intentional. This is the part of the night medieval people knew well, the long, dark hours that stretch between first sleep and waking, when time loosens and the mind drifts without urgency. You are not unconscious in the way modern sleep often demands. Instead, you float in and out, aware of your surroundings, without reacting to them. This kind of rest was common before artificial light reshaped human schedules. People often slept in segments, waking naturally for a while in the middle of the night before sleeping again. Letters, prayers, and household records all hint at this pattern. Lying here, you understand how easily it happens. Your eyes open briefly, and you stare into the dark without feeling alarm. The tavern is quieter now than it has been all night. Even the snoring has softened, breaking off into irregular bursts rather than steady drones. The fire glows low, barely illuminating the room. Shadows have stopped moving so much. Everything feels paused. You notice your thoughts wandering gently, not chasing anything specific. You think about the road you traveled earlier, the sound of your own steps fading behind you. You think about morning, though it feels far away. There is no clock here, no marker of time except the slow cooling of the air. This kind of wakefulness does not feel like insomnia. It feels like rest with your eyes open. Medieval writers described it matter-of-factly, mentioning waking to pray, reflect, or simply lie quietly before drifting off again. There was no anxiety about not sleeping through the night. The night was long. Sleep could be taken in portions. You shift slightly, testing your limbs. They feel heavy, warm, content enough. The pallet beneath you has molded itself to your shape, straw compressed where you lie most often. It is not comfortable, but it is familiar now. Familiarity counts for more than softness. A soft sound draws your attention. Somewhere near the door, someone sighs and turns over. Outside, very faintly, you hear wind in the trees. The world beyond the tavern exists again, reminding you that this shelter is temporary. Soon you will leave it behind. You think about how different this rhythm is from modern nights. No glowing screens, no alarms set hours ahead. Darkness dictates pace. Fatigue and light do the rest. Your body responds naturally, unpressured by expectations. Your eyes close again, not out of effort but inclination. Thoughts blur. Images drift by without forming stories. You feel yourself sliding back into sleep, then hovering again. This back and forth continues, gentle and unforced. At one point, you become aware of someone whispering a prayer nearby. The words are too quiet to make out, but the cadence is familiar. It ends softly. Silence returns. Nighttime prayers were common, often said during these waking intervals. Not dramatic, just habitual. You realize that the fear and alertness from earlier hours have worn themselves out. Exhaustion has smoothed them down. The dangers you imagined feel distant now. Abstract. Fire. Collapse. Illness. All possible. None immediate. The dog near the hearth stretches and resettles, nails clicking briefly, then going still. Animals sleep in cycles too. You take comfort in their calm presence again. Eventually, without marking the moment, you sink fully back into sleep. This time, it is deeper, dreamless. Your breathing slows. Muscles release completely. The tavern continues to exist around you, but it no longer reaches you at all. This is the heart of the medieval night. Not the noisy beginning, not the anxious checks, but this long, quiet middle where time stretches and the world waits. You remain here for a while, suspended between yesterday and tomorrow, held by darkness, warmth, and the shared stillness of many bodies sleeping together. You wake before you mean to, drawn upward by subtle changes rather than any single sound. The air feels different, cooler, lighter, as if the room has exhaled. Your eyes open slowly, and for a moment you are unsure what time it is. The darkness has thinned, just slightly, enough to suggest that night is loosening its grip. Somewhere nearby, a body shifts with intention. Not the restless movement of sleep, but the deliberate act of waking. Fabric rustles. A quiet cough is followed by the scrape of a bench being nudged back into place. Morning is beginning, not with an announcement, but with small, practical gestures. You remain still, watching through half-closed eyes. One by one, others stir. A man sits up slowly, rubbing his face with both hands as if trying to wipe away the night. Another swings their legs over the edge of a pallet and sits hunched, breathing deeply before standing. No one speaks yet. Voices feel too heavy for the air. The fire is coaxed back to life. A servant kneels at the hearth, adding a small piece of wood and blowing gently until embers glow brighter. The room warms almost immediately, heat spreading unevenly. The smell of fresh smoke joins the older layers, sharp and new. Outside, something calls. A bird, maybe. The sound slips through cracks in the walls. Thin, but unmistakable. Dawn is near. You feel the stiffness settle into your body as awareness returns fully. Muscles protest when you shift your legs, joints aching from the palate and the cold. This discomfort is familiar to medieval mornings. Waking rarely felt gentle. It was something you worked through. Around you, people begin to reclaim themselves. Blankets are folded roughly, cloaks shaken out, sending faint clouds of dust into the air. Boots are pulled on, laces tightened. Someone stretches with a low groan, unashamed. Sleep has ended. Function resumes. The tavern keeper is up now too, moving with the same quiet authority as the night before. They take stock of the room with a quick glance. Who is awake? Who still sleeps? What needs doing? The night has passed without disaster, and that success demands follow through. A bucket appears again, water sloshing softly as it is carried across the floor. The smell of damp wood rises as the floor is splashed and roughly cleaned. Not thoroughly, just enough to push aside the worst of the night. Straw is kicked back into place. Order is restored, or at least the appearance of it. You sit up slowly, giving yourself time to adjust. Your head feels heavy, not painful, just full. Ale residue and interrupted sleep leave their mark. You rub your eyes, then your neck, working out stiffness with practiced movements. As more people rise, the room grows louder, but not in the way it was last night. The sound now is purposeful. Short exchanges, muted greetings, questions about the road ahead. Someone asks about the weather. Another complains about the hardness of the floor. A laugh answers them, tired but genuine. Food appears again, simpler this time. Bread, cut thick. A pot is set near the fire, steam rising. Something warm and thin, likely broth or porridge. Morning meals were about readiness, not indulgence. Enough to carry you forward, not slow you down. You accept a portion when it is offered, warming your hands on the bowl before eating. The heat seeps into you, chasing away the last of the night's chill. The taste is plain, comforting in its predictability. You eat slowly, aware of how quickly the room will empty once people are fed. There is a shift in how people look at one another now. The night has leveled certain boundaries. You shared space, warmth, and vulnerability. Morning reintroduces distance. Eyes meet briefly, then move on. There is no need for prolonged acknowledgement. You were companions for a night. Now you are travelers again. You notice that some people leave without much ceremony. They gather their things, settle accounts, and step outside, drawn by daylight and obligation. Others linger, stretching out the transition, reluctant to face the road just yet. When you stand, your legs feel unsteady for a moment. You pause, waiting for balance to return. It does. You pull your cloak tighter around you, aware of how it smells now, marked by the tavern. Smoke, wool, human presence. You will carry that with you for a while. Payment is settled simply. A few coins exchanged. A nod from the tavern keeper. No receipt, no farewell speech. The transaction ends as quietly as it began. You move toward the door with the others, the light growing brighter with each step. When the door opens, morning spills in. Cool air, pale sky. The sound of birds fully awake now, filling the space the tavern had held all night. You step outside and breathe deeply. The smell of damp earth replaces smoke. Your eyes squint, adjusting to the light. Behind you, the tavern continues, already reshaping itself for the day. The night you spent there is closing, becoming memory. You stand for a moment longer, letting your body catch up to the fact that it is morning, that you slept, that you made it through. Then you turn toward the road, joining the quiet flow of people moving on, each carrying the same unspoken relief. Morning sharpens details that night softened. With daylight comes accounting, and not just of coins. You feel it as you stand just inside the tavern again, blinking as your eyes adjust between the pale outdoors and the dim interior. This is the moment where the night is translated into cost. The tavern keeper waits near a small table, posture relaxed but attentive. They do not rush you. There is no line, no barked instructions. People approach when ready, one by one, coins already in hand. Everyone understands the order. Sleep has been taken. Food has been eaten. Now comes settlement. You watch the exchanges before stepping forward. A traveller slides a few coins across the table. The tavern keeper glances at them, then back at the traveller. A brief shake of the head. One more coin is added. The nod that follows seals it. No argument. Prices were known loosely, but variation was expected. How much you ate, how much you drank, how long you stayed, how much trouble you caused, all of it factors in. Medieval taverns rarely operated on fixed posted prices the way modern establishments do. Local custom mattered more than signage. Some towns tried to regulate rates, especially along busy trade routes, but enforcement depended heavily on distance and reputation. Here, negotiation is quiet and efficient. When it is your turn, you place your coins down carefully, spreading them slightly so they can be counted at a glance. The tavern keeper looks at you, then at the coins, then back at you. There is a pause, long enough to make you wonder if you have misjudged. They tap one coin with a finger, pushing it gently back toward you. You hesitate, then realize. You overpaid. Whether out of caution or misunderstanding hardly matters. The correction is made without comment. This small fairness stays with you more than you expect. Payment is not just for the palate and the stew. It covers warmth, space, tolerance, the fact that you were allowed to sleep among strangers without interference. That value is understood, even if it is never spoken. Behind you, someone complains softly about the cost. The tavern keeper listens, expression neutral, then replies in a tone that ends the conversation. The complaint fades. There is no appeal beyond this point. Authority here is final, even in daylight. You notice that not everyone pays in coins. A man offers a small bundle of dried goods. Another promises work later in the day, a delivery, a repair. Taverns often operated as nodes in local economies, where barter and credit filled gaps left by scarce currency. Trust mattered. Memory mattered. The tavern keeper's mental ledger was as important as any written record. Once payment is settled, people linger only briefly. Some thank the tavern keeper with a nod or a word. Others simply turn and leave. Gratitude is optional. Obligation is complete. You gather your things, feeling the subtle shift as your role changes. You are no longer a sleeper. You are a customer finished with the night. The space releases you gently, without ceremony. As you move toward the door again, you take one last look at the room. The pallets are already gone, stacked or dragged away. Straw has been redistributed. Tables are back in place. The tavern looks almost respectable in the morning light, its roughness less obvious. If you did not know better, you might not guess what the night held. This transformation happens quickly because it must. Taverns did not exist solely for travelers. Locals would arrive soon for drink, news, and business. The night leaves few visible traces by design. You step outside again, coins lighter in your pouch, body heavier with fatigue. The sun sits low, casting long shadows across the road. Morning is still cool, but it promises warmth later. There is a moment of reflection as you stand there, unhurried. You consider what the night cost you. Not just money, but comfort, privacy, a certain sense of control, and in exchange, what you gained. Shelter, food, survival, a story you will carry, even if you never tell it aloud. For medieval travelers, this exchange was constant. Every stop demanded calculation. Every night required compromise. Taverns were not luxuries. They were infrastructure, as essential as bridges and wells. You adjust your cloak, settling it more comfortably on your shoulders. The smell of the tavern still clings to it, but it will fade with time and wind. For now, it marks you as someone who has passed through. Around you, others are already moving on. The road calls in multiple directions. Paths diverge quickly once people leave the shared space of the tavern. The brief community dissolves without fuss. You take one last breath, then turn fully toward your own route. Payment is done. The night is behind you. Whatever judgment it passed has already been absorbed. You step forward, boots finding rhythm on the road, carrying the quiet understanding that rest, in this world, always comes with a price, and you have paid it. Once you are a few steps down the road, something subtle settles over you. It is not relief exactly, though there is some of that. It is the sense of being seen, measured, and now quietly assessed after the fact. Sharing a night leaves traces, not just on cloaks and boots, but on reputation. You feel it when another traveller walking ahead glances back at you, briefly, then looks away. There is no hostility in the look, just recognition. You were there. You slept in the same room. That alone creates a thin connection, one that will vanish by midday but exists for now. Inside the tavern, judgment has already begun its quiet work. Who paid promptly? Who complained? Who drank too much? Who caused disturbance in the night? These details linger in the tavern keeper's memory long after faces blur. In a world where written records were limited, memory functioned as social currency. Being remembered well mattered. You replay the night in fragments as you walk. The pallet, the shared blanket, the interruptions. Nothing stands out as shameful. Nothing heroic either. That is good. Blending in is often the safest outcome. Medieval communities, even transient ones like this, were observant. People notice patterns. A traveller who caused trouble in one place might find doors less welcoming down the road if word travelled. News moved surprisingly fast along trade routes, carried by merchants, pilgrims, and innkeepers who shared stories as readily as ale. You adjust your pace, falling into step with the rhythm of the road. With daylight, the night's intimacy feels distant, almost unreal. Faces you slept beside are already becoming vague impressions, yet the sense of being evaluated lingers. Judgment here is not moral in the abstract sense. It is practical. Were you safe to sleep near? Did you respect space? Did you pay? Did you leave without mess or dispute? These questions shape how you are remembered, if at all. There is also your own judgment to contend with. You consider how the tavern measures up against others you have known or imagined. Not especially clean, not especially dangerous. Adequate. That is high praise in this context. You realize that if you return tonight, you would not be entirely unknown. That thought carries a strange comfort. Familiarity, even thin familiarity, eases the edges of uncertainty. As you walk, the road opens into fields, dew still clinging to grass. The smell of smoke fades gradually, replaced by damp earth and growing things. Each breath feels lighter. Your body loosens, no longer compressed by shared space. Behind you, the tavern recedes. From this distance, it looks ordinary, even unremarkable. Just another building along the road. Its role in your night is already hidden again. You think about how many judgments passed through those walls over time, how many travelers were weighed and found tolerable, how many nights ended without incident and were forgotten. History remembers extremes. Most nights were like yours, ordinary, uncomfortable, survivable. The sense of being judged fades as the morning progresses. Other concerns take its place. Distance, weather, the next place to rest. The night in the tavern becomes part of a longer chain of experiences, each influencing the next. Still, something stays with you, a sharpened awareness of how behavior echoes beyond immediate moments. In a shared world, actions ripple outward quietly. You straighten your posture, adjust your grip on your belongings, and continue on. Whatever the tavern thought of you, it thought enough to let you sleep and leave in peace. That is enough. By the time the sun lifts higher, the night's verdict no longer matters. You are already becoming someone else again, reshaped by movement and light. The road accepts you without judgment at all. The farther you walk, the more the tavern loosens its grip on you. It does not disappear all at once. It peels away in layers. First the sounds fade, then the faces, then the weight of the shared night. What lingers longest are the small physical reminders, the stiffness in your shoulders, the faint ache in your lower back, the smell caught in your cloak. You pause briefly where the road bends, just long enough to adjust the strap on your bag. When you straighten, you catch a last glimpse of the tavern's roof between trees. Smoke rises in a thin, steady line now, purposeful and calm. Morning business has begun. Bread will be cut, ale poured, news exchanged. The night you shared with that place is already gone from its awareness. You turn fully away. The road ahead is quieter than it was last night, softened by daylight. Ruts are easier to see now. Stones announce themselves instead of waiting to trip you. Your steps find a rhythm that belongs only to you again. Solitude returns, not as loneliness, but as space. As you walk, you notice how your senses recalibrate. Your ears no longer strain to catalogue every sound. Your eyes lift from the ground to the horizon. The tension that held your body alert through the night unwinds slowly, vertebra by vertebra. It occurs to you that this contrast is part of the experience. The tavern compresses life inward. The road stretches it back out. One prepares you for the other. You think about how medieval travelers often described roads as places of reflection. Long stretches of walking left the mind free to wander. The night's impressions rise and fall without pressure. You replay moments not because you need to, but because they surface naturally. The dog by the hearth, the shared blanket, the quiet authority of the tavern keeper. None of it feels dramatic now. It feels human. Ordinary people solving ordinary problems in ways that worked well enough. This ordinariness is easy to miss when imagining the past. Stories tend to sharpen edges. Reality, you realize, is softer and more repetitive. Nights like this one happen thousands of times, rarely recorded because nothing extraordinary occurred. Your cloak shifts in the breeze, carrying the last faint trace of smoke. You consider stopping to air it out, then decide against it. The smell will fade on its own. For now, it feels like proof that you were there, that the night was real. As the sun rises higher, warmth spreads across your shoulders. The chill from the tavern finally releases its hold. Your muscles respond, loosening further. The road feels less demanding now. You pass a farmer working in a field. They glance up briefly, nod, and return to their task. To them, you are just another traveler. The night you spent among strangers does not matter here. Identity resets quickly on the road. That thought brings an unexpected lightness. Whatever awkwardness or vulnerability you felt in the tavern has no audience now. The world ahead knows nothing about how you slept or who you slept near. It only knows how you walk. You settle into that anonymity with relief. Time stretches again, but differently than it did in the dark hours. Now it is marked by distance rather than breath. A stand of trees passed, a bend in the road cleared, the sun climbing. You stop once to drink, finding a place where water runs clear enough to trust. You cup your hands, rinse your mouth, splash your face. The cold shocks you awake fully, washing away the last fog of interrupted sleep. When you straighten, you feel reset, not refreshed, exactly, but functional, capable. The tavern night folds itself into the larger story of your journey, no longer demanding attention. It becomes reference rather than focus, something you will draw on if needed, not dwell on. As the road opens into wider country, you realize that this pattern repeats itself across medieval life. Compression and release, crowd and solitude, noise and quiet. Each depends on the other to make sense. You walk on, letting the steady movement carry you forward. The night recedes fully now, leaving behind only its lessons. None of them shouted, all of them learned quietly. By the time the tavern is truly out of sight, it feels as though it happened to someone else. That is how travel works. Places imprint you, then let you go. You continue down the road, carrying forward with you not discomfort or fear, but a calm understanding of how people once slept and why they did it that way. The world opens, the day begins in earnest, and you move on, unencumbered, leaving the tavern to the next tired traveler who will arrive at dusk and make the same bargain you did. By the time the sun climbs high enough to warm the road properly, the night feels distant in a way that surprises you. Not erased, just folded neatly away. It no longer presses on your thoughts. Instead, it settles somewhere quieter, like a memory that will surface later when you least expect it. As you walk, you begin to understand what lingers most from a night like that. Not the discomfort, not even the fatigue. What stays with you is the normalization of it all. The way sleeping among strangers did not feel exceptional to the people who lived it. The way inconvenience was simply part of the cost of movement. For medieval travelers, the tavern was not a novelty. It was a pause, a necessary one, a place where the road loosened its grip just enough to let the body recover before demanding more. There was no expectation of comfort beyond shelter and warmth. Anything more was luck. You reflect on how modern ideas of rest have shifted. Privacy, quiet, cleanliness, control. These are now considered basic. In the world you just passed through, they were conditional, negotiated, often unavailable. And yet, people slept. They woke. They continued. That resilience was not heroic. It was habitual. You think again of the shared palate, the quiet adjustments of bodies making space for one another, the unspoken rules that governed the night. None of it required explanation. It worked because everyone understood the stakes. Cold, theft, exhaustion. These were tangible problems, not abstractions. There is something grounding in that clarity. When needs are simple, solutions follow. They may not be pleasant, but they are effective. As the road stretches on, you imagine how many lives passed through similar nights. Merchants, pilgrims, messengers, people carrying news, goods, grief, hope, each one arriving tired, weary, and leaving at dawn with the same unspoken gratitude, alive, fed, rested enough. Most of them left no record behind, no diary, no letter describing the palate or the smell or the snoring. Their nights survive only in patterns, in laws, in scattered complaints and passing mentions. Yet those ordinary nights shaped how societies functioned just as much as battles and crowns. You feel a quiet respect settle in, not for hardship itself, but for the way people adapted to it without ceremony, how systems grew around need, how taverns became nodes of survival rather than comfort, how sleep adjusted itself to circumstance. By now, the tavern exists only as an idea again, a symbol of what it meant to rest in a world without guarantees. You no longer smell the smoke, your muscles have warmed, your steps feel steady. But the understanding remains. You know now what it was really like. Not romantic, not terrifying, simply human. The road carries you forward, and with each step, the night becomes something you can look back on calmly, without tension. A lesson learned not through instruction, but experience. And in that knowledge, there is a quiet satisfaction. You walk on, letting the day take over completely, while the memory of that shared night settles gently behind you, no longer demanding attention, only offering perspective. Now, as the road stretches ahead and the world feels calmer, let your breathing slow. Imagine the rhythm of your steps easing, your shoulders lowering, your thoughts growing softer. The tavern is far behind you now. The noise has faded. The pallets have been cleared away. The fire has burned down to embers. What remains is the understanding that rest does not always arrive in perfect conditions. Sometimes it comes in shared spaces, in borrowed warmth, in moments taken rather than given. And that is enough. You are safe now. The night has passed. The body knows what to do. It always has. Let the images dissolve. Let the road blur gently. Let the weight of the day fall away just as the weight of the night already has. There is nothing left to watch for, nothing left to decide. Just slow, steady breath, quiet, stillness. You can rest here. Sweet dreams.